And so I want to continue tonight on what we were talking about last Sunday, but more specifically, I would like to zero in. I was not able to finish my outline on addiction. I realize all of us, in one form or the other, has an addiction. Some of us may not be willing to admit it, that we do have an addiction. Okay? So, how did we define what an addiction is? Or how do we get to be addicted based on last Sunday? It starts off as a what? Before you get addicted to something, what happens? Of course, you engage in that activity, or whether there are some things that there is something that I forgot last Sunday, because addiction, the forms of addiction that we have, number one, it could be substances, right? Like nicotine, alcohol, what else? Alcohol, food. Okay, I hope if you are addicted to food, it should be good food, okay? Okay, substances, like inhales in the Philippines, because people are poor there, the substances that they are addicted to are inhaled substances. Okay? For those of us who grew up in the Philippines, we often see even kids as young as what? 10 or even younger, 5 years old. You know what they do? You will see them in a corner and they will have what you call as rugby. Okay, do you know, American-born kids, do you know what a rugby is? Not the game, okay? Do you know what rugby is? Huh? American-born kids, DJ, you know what a rugby is? Not the game. How about you, Joel? Okay, rugby is an adhesive. You know, when your shoes is smiling, you put an adhesive there. Here we use, sometimes we use Gorilla, okay, from the dollar store. But in the Philippines, growing up in a family that fixes shoes, we use rugby, okay? I don't know why it's called rugby. The brand is not rugby, but we call it rugby. Maybe I should look into that, okay? Or even spray, like thinner, something that has to do with smelling, okay? So those are substances, okay? Also, we talked about being addicted to an activity, like going on the internet, right? Uh, um, Watching TV, okay? Social media, okay? YouTube, I think it's a very common addiction, watching YouTube and TikTok, okay? Now, and then, you know what? Working can be addictive. Any workaholics here? You know, it can be driven when you want to work so hard. What do you think can be? Do you think is it that's driving you to work so hard? Maybe because of financial need, or sometimes it could be because you want to get away from family, from friends. You want to be isolated. But one underlying thing about greed, which I realized lately when I was thinking deeply, it could be grounded by greed. Okay, there is a verse in the Bible. Let me just see if I have it, that talks about greed. Okay. You know how there's a verse in the Bible that talks about getting away from being greedy? I'll find it later, okay? But look, it could be an extreme greed for wealth or material gain. Later on, we'll go deeper into that one, okay? And of course, some activities, sometimes we may not be aware, but activities like not only going on the internet, not only gossiping or anything, shopping can be an addiction. How can shopping be an addiction? Okay. When you buy things that you don't need or you don't really want just because it's on sale. How many of us have done that? You buy things that you don't really need, you don't really want, it doesn't really fit you anymore. You have no use for it, but because the price is too good, you bought it. Raise your hand. Hansel, we're classmates. We're the only ones who has an, who has who had an addiction to shopping. Okay, but after you go into that addiction, just like any other addiction, what feelings follow it? Okay, you feel guilty. Do you feel guilty? Okay, yes. Okay, do you feel ashamed? I mean, the dress that you bought is 4 sizes smaller than your actual size, but you bought it thinking you're gonna lose weight. Isn't it shameful when you buy something that doesn't fit you, but because the price is too good or the dress is so nice, you buy it? Sometimes you feel ashamed. Just like when you indulge in activities like pornography, binge eating, you feel ashamed, you feel guilty. That's why it's an addiction, because you are not only physically and mentally dependent on that thing or that substance, you just can't stop taking it or you just can't stop doing it. Okay? And then, even though you know it has negative effects on you, like we told you, not all kinds of habits. In the same manner, later on we will discuss, not all kinds of addictions has negative effects on us. Okay? But even though we know it's already harming us, we still continue to indulge in it. That's why addictions are bandages. What's the picture of a bandage to you? If you were to illustrate bandage, what kind of picture would you see? Okay, it's somebody who's chained or tied, okay, and can't do anything about it. Is it can't do anything about it or don't want to do anything about it? Because if we are addicted, we are in bondage. Is it a matter of not wanting to do anything about it or can't do anything about it? What do you think? Those who drinks a lot, drug addicts, okay, those who have uncontrolled shopping, is it because they don't like to do, they can't help themselves, or is it because they enjoy doing it, but then after that you feel shameful or guilty, okay? But you know what? When you go to a psychologist, they will say it's something beyond their control, right? Because when you go to psychologists, they are not Bible-based, okay? But for us, because we are born-again Christian, we know that a bandage is just it can be for us in the Bible, it can only be a 3-letter word. And what is that? Sin. Okay? In short, our bandages are a result of most of the time, it's a result of our own behavior, of our own actions, of our own choices. That's why when we suffer because of our bandages, or we have bad consequences, it's of our own doing and we can't blame anybody for that. The Bible talks about same thing with these all sorts of bondages, we expose ourselves into the thing that we are bonded to, or we are a slave to. The Bible calls it a slave to sin. Okay? And so, because of that, we lose self-control and we can't stop from doing it. Um, it's our fault when we expose ourselves. If we know that we are, we have a bondage towards uh, drinking intoxicating things, we should be avoiding places where they sell it or places who are engaging in heavy drinking. Actually, the Bible is very clear about it. Let's turn our Bibles to 1 Corinthians 5, verse 11. Okay, there is a version, okay? But now I am writing to you. Who's writing here in Corinthians? Okay, Paul. That you must not associate with anyone who claims to be a brother or sister, okay, but is sexually immoral or greedy, an idolater or slanderer, a drunkard or a swindler. Do not even eat with such people. So the context here of Paul is that we will not associate with anybody just because they have the name, they have the word brother or sister before their proper name. Okay? If, okay, he is addicted to fornication, sexually immoral, or avarice or idol worship, okay? This is where I was talking to you about avarice. Avarice is you are extremely greedy for wealth or material gain, okay? You always have a strong desire to earn money, and possessions, okay? You have that desire that cannot seem to be satisfied. It's insatiable. That's avarice. That's why it says here, do not associate with such people who are addicted to fornication or avarice or idol worship or abusive language or hard drinking, so intoxicating drinks, or greed of gain. With such a man you ought not to even eat. So even if it's a brother or a sister supposedly in the Lord, if we know that that person has a very unhealthy or bad addiction, what does the Bible say? Do not even eat with that person. Why do you think should we not even eat with that person? With such a man, you ought not to even eat. Okay, that's 1 Corinthians 5:11. Why? Number one, if you know you have an existing weakness, and then you continue to associate with the person who has the same weakness as you, will you strengthen one another? No, because that brother is still in that addiction. Okay? Let's say my daughter knows I'm addicted to, let's say, shopping, and she has a weakness for shopping. You think I have a right to help her? I'll be able to help her? You know, when you are in an airplane, and let's say there's a turbulence, and then the oxygen mask falls from the ceiling, what is the instruction of the stewardess? Okay, put your mask on first. Even if you have a 1-year-old child beside you, don't give her the mask first. Why? Because how can you help her if you're dead? Right? So you have to help yourself first before helping other people. So in addictions, don't even come close. If you know a friend of yours is into sexual immorality, it says a brother, we're talking in the context of a brother, don't associate with that brother or that sister. Why? You're just continually going to dig a hole into that addiction. Unless that brother or sister is repentant and really doing his or her best to be able to recover or be delivered from that addiction. Okay? That's why if you will look at the text, okay, it says here, if he was addicted to fornication or avarice or idol worship, see, if you will look at that, it looks like um, being addicted to fornication or or to the accumulation of wealth is is like it's in the same category of idol worship. So what happens is that whatever you are being addicted to, because eventually that's going to be your focus, or that's what you indulge in, and that's what you spend most of your time with, it becomes your idol in a way that it stands between you and God. Because it's sin, it stands between you and God. And that's going to affect your relationship with God. Okay? And so, in that greed for wealth, you want so much to have more money that you will go after money or gain, even if you cheat, unjust gain, even by cheating. And so, in its very nature, avarice, like the rest of the sins that were mentioned by Paul here, is a form of idol worship. Okay? And so, the Bible talks about addictions. Okay? Let's turn our Bibles to 1 Timothy 3, verse 8. Okay? It's one of the qualifications that not being addicted is one of the qualifications for deacons, for overseers. 1 Timothy 3, verse 8. Deacons, likewise, must be dignified, not double-tongued, not addicted to much wine, and not greedy for dishonest gain. Okay? Dishonest gain, love for wealth. Okay? So what does that mean? Deacons, we have established that it's not a sin to drink alcohol. How does it become a sin? When you're excessively indulging in it. And so deacons should not indulge in too much wine. How do you know if somebody has indulged in too much wine or intoxicating drink? How do you know? How do you know if a person is sinning with the way he drinks? He gets drunk. Right? Okay. So look, not only a qualification for deacons, but look, older women, Titus 2, verse 3. Older women, likewise, are to be reverent in their behavior. Okay? So if you want to be respectable, okay, older women, it says here, not slanderers or addicted to much wine, but teachers of good. So, older women, like, how old is older women? How old is older women? I forgot to ask my husband this. How old is an older? How do you classify a woman to be old? When do you call a woman an older woman? John, do you know? 59. I know last week I told you last Sunday about widows, right? 60 and above, they don't need to remarry. But below 60, they can remarry. So how do we know if somebody who's 50 is old? How do you differentiate a 50-year-old from a 59-year-old? They're both in their 50s. Are they both old? How do you know? Okay. The color of their hair. What if they dye their hair? Okay. And so, I'm going to ask Pastor Jose, who's that older woman? What's the age qualification? Okay. But actually, like he said during the birthday of Ella, maturity is not a matter of number, not an age. Because an 18-year-old can be mature and a 59-year-old can be immature because of the decisions that they make. Titus 1, verse 7. For the overseer must be above reproach as God's steward, not self-willed, not quick-tempered, not addicted to wine. See, I was telling myself, how come when the Bible talks of addiction, a lot of the things, it talks about addiction to wine. So maybe in the old days, dami sigurong lasenggo nung araw. There's so many drunkards in those days. Are there a lot of drunkards nowadays? Do you know any drunkard right now if I ask you? Okay. I was watching the news like 3 weeks ago. I was sharing it with my husband. It said that the consumption of alcohol and intoxicating drinks have gone down. The sales of alcohol have gone down. Do you know why? Huh? You know why? Drugs are still expensive. You know why? Because now from drugs, no, from alcohol, they went to weeds. Because it's legal now, right? Marijuana is legal now. So instead of liquid, they want gas. Cookies. Right? I have no idea. How does the weed, when you buy it from that corner of Milwaukee and Devon, it's in the form of what? Is that grass when you say weeds? Is it really grass when you buy it? Huh? It's candy? Oh, really? Marijuana is candy? Oh, gummies. Okay. Okay. I will not ask her how she knows because she's in the medical field. Okay? No, I was wondering when you say, I think in the 70s they roll it. It's really grass, right? Okay. I have I know somebody, her son, because they live in a big property. You know what her son did? Her young son started planting weeds in their property, and she had no knowledge because she doesn't know what weeds look like. You know, uh, she had no knowledge. She doesn't know how they look like. She doesn't know how they smell. Until one day, her neighbor told her, "Why are you planting weeds in your property?" Okay. So Jessica, do they just sprout or you have to be planting them intentionally? Oh, intentionally. Akala ko there's like pollination. Oh. I'm so ignorant. I don't know. I never bothered to check it. Okay, so it says in that verse, Titus 1 verse 7, not, I don't know how you pronounce this, pugnacious. How do you pronounce that? Pugnacious. What do you mean by pugnacious, guys? Have you ever, when you read your Bible, do you have a dictionary? My son has a dictionary when he reads his Bible. What does pugnacious mean? Don't look at Google, okay? Tell me, huh? What's a pugnacious person? No, pugnacious, Pugnacious. That's the word for the day. Okay. What? Looking for arguments? Is that what you Googled? Okay, I looked at the definition. Okay? Pugnacious means not a bully. Not a bully. So, Jan? Okay, it's a bully. That's why not a bully. So if you are pugnacious, you are not qualified to be an overseer. Not fond of sordid gain. See, greed. Okay? And so, God was very strict about drinking wine or intoxicating drink. Why do you think was he very strict about that? Maybe God knew you can be addicted to it. Right? There are just some things that you can be addicted to. You start off with one game. Before you know it, wow, I see some faces smiling. You move on to, and it's the same game. I know somebody who is old to this day, plays Crush Candy. So I told that person, that's passé, right? How many years ago were you playing Crush? Candy Crush. See, I don't even know the name properly. Candy Crush, right? Okay. But she just can't stop from playing Candy Crush. And I know my kids have moved on. My husband will be playing a game and he will say, I like a game that doesn't make you think, just to uh, waste time. What kind, you know, it starts with a very innocent beginning. Start, beginning, okay? One game, one game becomes two, right? A second game turns into three, right? You know, addiction is not you gobble it all at one time. But then, because you will notice it's taking up too much of your time, too much of your resources, then you realize, before you know it, you have no control. You can't stop doing it. You can't stop doing it. That's why, because of that, you cannot, you realize you have no self-control. Right? Like I told you, God is very strict about drinking. Let's turn our Bibles to Leviticus 10, verse 8. Okay. Then the Lord spoke to Aaron, saying, do not drink wine or intoxicating drink, you nor your sons with you, when you go into the tabernacle of meeting, lest you die. How are they going to die if they enter the tabernacle of meeting drunk? How will they die? How? Are they going to sleep? How are they going to die? God will kill them. Okay? It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, that you may distinguish, you see, you know why it's God going to kill them? Distinguish between holy and unholy. So drunkenness, entering the tabernacle of meeting drunk, makes one unholy and unclean. Okay? So if one of us here enters the sanctuary drunk or high on drugs or whatever addiction, that makes him unclean. It says here, unclean and unholy. Verse 11, that you may teach the children of Israel all the statutes by which the Lord has spoken to them by the hand of Moses. You see, what does it tell you then? Number one, it tells you unhealthy addictions can make us unclean and unholy. Okay? That's why God is even telling, okay, look again at verse 11. That you may teach the children of Israel all the statutes by which the Lord has spoken to them by the hand of Moses. Okay, intoxicating drink or any form of addiction will not give you a sober mind, right? They say that people who are drunk or high on drugs, they can't make a good decision. You can't even talk to them properly. Okay? And so, Pastor Jose was telling me when his dad is so drunk, that's when he asks for something. Okay? Some people say it could be advantageous for them. In short, okay, if you are unclean and unholy, can you teach the children of Israel, your children, about the words of the Lord? Right? I mean, if you're an addict yourself, like I told you earlier, can I teach her about stopping the addiction? Can I teach her about being holy and clean if I myself am not clean and holy? We will lose the right to teach or be effective in teaching our children if we have these unhealthy addictions, if they see us being addicts ourselves. That's why God was telling Aaron that he and his sons should not even enter the holy place intoxicated. Because like I told you earlier, if you start drinking one, the next day it will be two bottles if you cannot control yourself. Okay? The Bible also, I was asking myself, there must have been so many drunkards in the old days. Okay? Because look, where where did it where is it in the Bible that says don't drink wine? That's that's not, right? But let's turn our Bibles to Proverbs 31, verse 4. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine. Okay? Kings should not even drink wine, nor for princes intoxicating drink. So it says here, not to drink wine. It didn't say not to be drunk. It's not to even drink wine. Why? Because lest they drink and forget the law. Okay? So it's associating that if you drink an intoxicating drink, you can forget the law, especially if you are a king, and pervert the justice of all the afflicted. You know how Pastor Jose was saying before that maybe when what's the name of the king who was telling Salome to do a lewd dance? What's the name of the king? In Esther, who was that? No, I'm sorry. Okay, in the book of Esther, he was asking the lady queen to do, Queen Vashti, right? To do an almost naked dance, okay? And that's why the king got so embarrassed because the queen would not do it. Okay. Also, one incident is that when Salome was asked by the king because she was dancing to their delight, you can ask for anything. And what did she ask for? The head of John the Baptist. So I was thinking maybe during those times, all those royal family, the king himself, were drunk. They were not thinking properly. Okay? And so, here, it says here, verse 1, look at Proverbs 31, verse 1. Okay? The words of King Lemuel, the utterance which his mother taught him. Who do you think is King Lemuel here? So I looked it up. Some scholars believe, because we know that the Psalms, the Proverbs, was written by Solomon. And most probably maybe King Lemuel, because Solomon is king, it could have been one of his names, or it could have been Hezekiah or another king. But in short, if it's King Solomon, who was the mom that he was referring to? Bathsheba. Okay? So, maybe I could be stretching it. I was not able to check with my husband. But remember how in Samuel, where it starts, in those days when kings go to war, where was David? David was in his palace, right? And he was chilling. And what could he have been doing while chilling in the palace? What could he have been doing? Right? In the Philippines, although I did not grow up in a household where people drank, okay, I know that people, it's a norm for people when they're chilling, they are gup gup. Okay? So maybe David was drinking and then he spotted Bathsheba bathing. That's why he was no longer thinking properly. Right? That's why you call it under the influence of. Okay, have you seen a drunk person drive? Okay, that's why there's so many deaths caused by drunk persons. I think there's a group called Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MAD. It's because they have lost a child because of a drunk driver. Okay? And so, what was the reason why the mother of King Lemuel was telling him, don't even touch wine. It is not for kings to drink wine. Why? Why? Look at the verse. What does it say? If they drink, they can forget the law and pervert the justice of all the afflicted. Okay? That means to say, when a king makes a decision or makes a judgment, it can be perverted. Okay? So, we'll follow that line of thought. Okay? Aside from the fact that drinking wine can make you addictive. I'm not telling that if you drink wine, you are addicted. Okay? But you will know you are addicted because you can no longer control or stop yourself from drinking it. Okay? And we're not only talking about wine. We're talking about the other activities that is controlling you. Okay? You are a slave to that activity because you don't know, you can't stop when you have to be stopping. Okay? So pervert here, it says pervert the justice of all the afflicted. Okay? So when somebody, let's not talk about pervert the person, pervert the adjective. Let's say that is so perverted, right? So when you say that something is perverted, that means to say there's a how do you call that? It has a purpose. Something has a purpose, but then you corrupt the purpose. Okay? From good, it becomes bad. Okay? You distort it. Okay? That's why it says you pervert the justice of all the afflicted. Okay? When somebody falls into perversion, you are drawing him away from what is right and good and bringing him to a place that is bad and evil, immoral, not right. From a moral person, he becomes an immoral person. Okay? Who are the people that we normally call perverts? We use them for what? We use them for people whose sexual behavior is regarded as immoral, abnormal, and unacceptable. In the Philippines, growing up, who did we call perverts? Immoral behavior, unacceptable, and not natural. In the book of Romans, who are perverts there? Why? Why? Because God gave them their sexuality, and now they are changing their sexuality. A male wants to be a female wants to be a male. That's why in Romans it says, God gave them over to their depraved mind. That means the mind is perverted. Okay? And so, what does it tell us then about addiction? An addiction can lead us not only to immorality, but it can make you a pervert. Okay? For example, studies have shown that those who are into pornographic materials, you know how do they end up being? They become rapists. Because what they watch, they have a tendency to follow. Okay? And so, have you heard of the word zoophilis? Zoophilis? Have you heard of that? Okay. Those are perverts whose sexual interests are animals. Zoo. Did you study that in your thing? Yeah. Jessica here is training to be a, how do you call yourself, Jessica? Okay. Okay. And then, how do you call perverts whose sexual interests are dead people? Do you know there's some, huh? Okay, necro meaning dead. Okay, there's some people who rapes dead bodies. So gross, huh? But they exist. How about those whose sexual interests are their relatives? Incestuous people. That's why, look, if you are into an addiction, that addiction can make you an immoral person. It can make you a pervert. Okay? Those people who are sexually immoral or into so many relationships and they go to bed with different people. In our days, we call them yucky. But now, we mingle with them. It's okay. Okay? You know your child is sleeping around, you're fine with it. Okay? You know? That's why if you go to psychologists, as telling you earlier, they say it's something that they have no choice. They do have a choice. Okay? I told you the Bible calls it sin. Okay? And so, if you cannot control or stop yourself from doing something that you know is sinful, you are, the Bible says, you are a slave to sin. That's why, look, if you can't control your mouth or your tongue, look at Proverbs 4, verse 24. Avoid all perverse talk. Stay away from corrupt speech. Okay? You know, this mouth is supposed to be used to praise God, to worship Him, to tell the truth. You have a perverse mouth, okay? Because like I told you last Sunday, gossiping, you can be addicted to it. Okay? And most of the time when you gossip, unless you have first-hand experience, it becomes a gossip. And so you instead of saying the truth, you speak lies. That by itself is a perversion. The Bible calls it perverse talk, perverse mouth. Okay? So it says here, so that means that if you become a slave of whoever you choose to obey, you can be a slave to sin. And the Bible says the wages of sin is death. Addictions can lead to immorality, can lead to perversions, can lead to death. Or you can choose to be a slave to God. When you go home, just read the whole chapter 6 of Romans. Okay? You can choose to obey God, which leads to righteous living. Let's turn our Bibles to 1 Timothy 3, verse 2. Okay? Look, again, it's another verse that says, an overseer must be above reproach, the husband of but one wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not dependent on wine, not violent, but gentle, peaceable, and free of the love of money. You know what? When you are abusive, it can be addictive. On the other hand of the spectrum, if you are the abused one, it can likewise be addictive. That's why you have wrong relationships. Is that, how do you call that relationship? It's a bad relationship. There's dependency on each other, okay? So how do you know? That's why you really need the help of the Lord, okay? How do you know if you are addicted? Tonight, let's check ourselves. You have secretive or dishonest behavior. You know, one of the things in my house, my kids, they say they're going to do number 2. It's already 45 minutes and they're still inside the bathroom. Do you believe it takes 45 minutes for you to do number 2? So what are they doing there? Maybe we should have a rule, no phones in the bathroom. Okay? So you know your kids are addicted to something with the use of the phone if they take for it. I was wondering, why do my kids have so much homework, they stay up so late, when they can manage their time? Because by the time they get to doing serious homework, it's already late at night. But before that, they're doing something else. Are you addicted? How is your performance at school or at work? Because we all know if you're addicted to something, you can't sleep, right? Why? Because you're doing it. You're on your phone, you're on your tablet, you're on your laptop. You know, Pastor and I, when we're sleeping, when we're about to sleep, he has a rule, okay? By the time he gets to bed, I should be on the bed. But if he catches me with my gadget, sometimes my kids will laugh because they can hear me screaming. You know why? my husband will try to grab my phone from me or my gadget because the rule is when we're going to be sleeping, no gadgets. How many of you fall asleep with your gadget on your face or on your chest? Right? You know you're addictive. You're addicted. Okay? That's why you perform poorly at work or in school because you are so tired from playing overnight. Okay? You have insomnia because of that addiction. Okay? Withdrawing from responsibility, you did withdraw from responsibility or socializing. I just realized I have some family who don't socialize with people because they're too much into games. Young people right now, I notice they don't know how to talk to people. I tell John, okay, teach your young people whenever they go to somebody's house, tell your young people to look for the owners of the house and at least have the decency to say, hello, are you still alive, Sister Anne? Right? How many of you here, you had young people coming to your house and they don't even say hello to you? They would say, Hansel is raising his hand. They would say hello to you in a way that they are the only ones who will hear it. Okay? Let the other person hear it. When you say hello, make sure the other person that you're saying hello to can hear you. And this is not only for young people, even for adults. We call that in our days good manners and right conduct. Okay? So if the young people right now are so much into games, into whatever they do with their gadget, not only they don't know how to talk to people, they don't know how to mingle with people, they don't even know how to engage in simple conversation that makes a lot of sense. Okay? And because they're so isolated playing or doing their thing, they lose interest in activities, in hobbies, or events that were once important to them. Okay, let's get ready. We're going to go to church. Oh, I'll just stay home anyway. I went to the morning service. Right? Why? Playing video games or watching YouTube or TikTok or whatever. Okay? And so, you already know you are addicted because you already know it's very harmful to you. Drinking too much beer, too much alcohol, raises your blood pressure and your blood sugar, and yet you keep drinking, you keep eating fatty foods, you have no self-control. You are being addicted. Okay? And so, you already know you are so addicted because you're trying your best to stop, but you just couldn't. How does a person who's addicted look like? You seen an addict, guys? How did they look like? They smell. Why? They don't anymore care about how they look like or how they smell. Right? They look so skinny. They look like they have not eaten in days. In the Philippines, if somebody wants to lose weight, you know what they do? They take shabu. They say if you take shabu, you will have no desire for food. And they look like zombies. Why? Because they have not slept properly. Okay? And so how do we deal with our addictions? That's why I wanted to teach some of the things that I missed last Sunday because I know this is a common problem for all of us. Okay? I commend you if you have no form of any addiction. Really, you should be the one teaching here. Okay? First, of course, you have to acknowledge that you have an addiction. Okay? I love to make money. I can't stop myself from making money. That's an addiction. Because you're doing it to the detriment of your family time, of your responsibilities. You don't care how you make the money as long as you make the money, even if you are cheating big time. Okay? Admit that you are addicted, because if you deny it, who are you hurting? Who are you deceiving? Yourself and the people that you love. I told you about gambling. That's such a bad thing. It can destroy families and the next generation. You know, people who are addicted to sex, sexual immorality, that sin will be passed on from generation to generation to generation. How do I know? I see it in my family. You will never be able to stop or remove your addiction unless you admit it. After you acknowledge that you are addicted to something, you confess your sin to the Lord. Lord, forgive me. Ask for wisdom and strength. Because, turn to Colossians 6, verse 1. Okay? What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? No. Certainly not. How shall we who dies to sin live any longer in it? That's why only God can deliver you from your bondage or from that addiction. You know what makes me recollect when I know I have to do something, I don't do it, and I know I'm not supposed to do something, but I keep doing it, and I know, God, I know you can deliver me from this thing. You know what picture I have in my mind? I picture Israel. Remember, when they were in Israel, they were what? They were slaves. And what did it take for them to be delivered from bondage? It took the hand of the Lord to take them out of Egypt where they were slaves. Now, how they responded to what God did for them, that's another story. But if you think God cannot deliver you, just remember, Israel was delivered by God from the slavery in Egypt by his power, by his might. Look at the miracles that he did just to be able to get them out of Egypt. The parting of the Red Sea, the distinction that they made. That's why we know God can deliver us from any bondage if we want to be delivered, right? You know how in the parables, was that the leper who told Jesus, or the paralytic, Lord, if you are willing, please heal me. So it's like telling the Lord, if you are willing, please deliver me from this addiction. But what did Jesus say? And what did Jesus say? I'm willing. So today, if you have an addiction, God is more than willing to deliver us from that addiction if we are willing. Okay? Next, you need to seek godly help. You know, if you're into so much immoralities, if you think you are trapped inside a man's body and you are a woman, oh man, that's depraved, that's perversion. Seek godly help. Why? Sometimes we need somebody who's physically present to help us get out of our bondage. That's why I said here, seek godly counsel and support to help you deal with that addiction. Okay? And earlier I said, avoid your addictions. The people and places who have made it accessible or easy for you to access whatever you're addicted to. But you know what? There are good addictions. Not all addictions are bad. Okay? Because one definition of being addicted is you're so devoted to it. You're so dedicated to a particular thing or activity that one of the words that we can say, I told you before, I used to tell my husband, I'm addicted to your love. That means you're so fixated on it, you're so devoted, you're dedicated to it. Let's turn our Bibles to 1 Corinthians 16, verse 15. You know that the household of Stephanas were the first converts in Achaia, and they have devoted themselves to the service of the Lord's people. I urge you, brothers and sisters. So who's the person here that Paul was talking about? Stephanas, okay? Was it just Stephanas? And his household, okay? There were supposed to be the first converts in Greece. Okay, Achaia is in Greece. And you know, they said you devoted themselves. That means they spent their lives serving the people of the Lord. Okay? That means one version, King James. I got it from King James. It says here, I beseech you, brethren, you know the house of Stephanas, that is the first fruits of Achaia, not Ikea. Okay? Yesterday, the other day I was at Ikea. My son told Joseph whenever he FaceTimes me, whenever he calls me, he does FaceTime. Why? For accountability sake. He wants to know where I go. So he FaceTimed me, and the first thing he said, Mom, are you at IKEA again? Okay. I used to be addicted to IKEA. My kids know that. Okay. And they have addicted themselves to the ministry of the saints. You can find a very healthy addiction in ministering to each other. Why? What did they do? Okay, what did Stephanus and his household do? 1 Corinthians 16, verse 17. Okay, 2 verses down. I am glad of the coming of Stephanas and Fortunatus and Achaicus, for that which is lacking on your part they have supplied. Whatever was lacking that the Corinthians did not give Paul, the house of Stephanus gave it to him. So, verse on those verses, how do we display this addiction to serve our fellow believers? Okay, Romans 12, verse 13. Okay, share with the saints and practice hospitality, distributing to the necessity of the saints, given to hospitality. You know, they say if you are indulged in one activity and it's not healthy, indulge in a healthy activity and you will forget the unhealthy activity. Okay, in the same manner, if your kids used to be so healthy in their activities and you find them in unhealthy activities or in addictions, that means they have forgo of the healthy activity. If you find your kids missing church, it's because they're doing something else that's not healthy. That's why if you focus yourselves on serving the fellowship of, in the book of Acts, right? When it was new, the church in Antioch, what did they devote themselves to? The breaking of bread, the teaching of the apostles, okay? The teachings of Jesus. What else? The fellowship of believers. What else? Prayer. Okay? So if you want to be addicted, those are the very healthy addictions that we could do. Remember, if you have an addictive behavior, two things. You have no control over it. You can't stop yourself from doing it, from taking it in or indulging in it, even though you know it's already very harmful to you. Okay? And so, in short, if you don't have control, you're not only a slave to it, it became the focus of your life. Okay? It became the focus of your life. That's why you suddenly are excluding others. You know, young people, I see how they degenerate in the way they love God. You stop seeing them one Sunday, 2 Sundays, until it's every Sunday. You know, you start missing them on Friday nights until Friday nights is no longer devoted to the Lord for them. You know, I wish parents could get this. Okay? As long as they're under your roof, you can demand that they go to church with you. Believe me, you can. Because if you want to instill the love of the Lord, instill in them the love of coming to the house of the Lord. You want to see your grandchildren loving the Lord? Make sure your children right now loves the Lord. Okay? And you know, allow yourself, because you lost control over what you're doing, you can't stop yourself. Allow yourself to be submissive to the word of the Lord. You know, some of us here, we know that addicts, they crave and they seek out to satisfy their addiction. Okay? Whether drugs, alcohol, pornography, shopping, video games. The thing is, no matter what the cost. Say no matter what the cost. It could be your grades, it could be your job, it could be your family, it could be your ministry. No matter what the cost. Okay? So instead, crave and seek for God and His Word. That so that instead of destroying yourself and the people that you love, the church that we love, you will be building your family, your friendships, and most importantly, God's kingdom. So, what's the best addiction that we can have while on earth? Best addiction? Taking care of our loved ones. Better addiction? Focus your life on God. Byproduct? You build His kingdom. Amen. Let's all stand up.